Welcome, welcome, good people. This is Choice Words, a podcast by Freedom to Choose Schools, and I am your host, J. Artist Wright. And today's episode, we are going to talk to founder, principal, pastor, veteran, all the things, Dr. Monica Hall with Thrive Christian Academy. Dr. Monica Hall started a private school, Thrive Christian Academy, in 2013. And in the series of conversations that we have around choice, we've talked about private school, we've talked about charter school, we've talked about micro school and homeschool. This falls completely in that same line, that vein of like, how do founders do this work, and specifically, how do founders of color do it? We're going on 13 years now that you've been running a fantastic school, and we're hoping that all of our listeners and viewers today can just get a sense of like where you were when you started the school. But before we completely dive in, is there anything else that you'd like our guests to know about you, Ms. Monica?
I think the important thing up front to say is that I don't know that I've done anything that anyone else couldn't do. That my story is unique to me, but anyone called to do this kind of work, I pray that you're encouraged. I pray that there's something said or done that encourages you to do the work. And I don't want you to be like, oh, she must not have a magic genie ball, or it's because it's a Christian school, or it's because she's a Black woman. Like anything native to my story could also be the launch pad or the inspiration that you need. I pray that it's the inspiration you need to get out and do the work as well. If you feel called to do this work, and if you're already in the work, I pray that you're motivated to stay in the work and continue this pursuit, because it is one that needs to be pursued with a sense of urgency, particularly with these generations and in this day and age. And so I am excited to get started. And as the track that my mom used to play on Saturday mornings, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save everybody. Yes, ma'am.
Woo,
Yes.
that just gave me chills. I'm about to get the Holy Spirit filled up in me right now. And it's so funny. So I know what she was doing Saturday morning, because my mom would put them records on too, and then we'd be cleaning up the house, right?
Cleaning the whole house.
Cleaning the whole house. So that
Yes,
just
ma'am.
literally gave me chills, or just reminded me of something. So I know it's about to be a good conversation. So let's start from the beginning. Take us back to that moment. What made you decide in 2013 that I'm going to build a school?
Well, part of it wasn't. Well, first and foremost, I take no credit for that. I'm an Army chaplain by trade. At the time, I had two babies already. I was pregnant with my son Andre, and I had a community center. I was renting a small house and running a community center just to offer chaplain services, because I'm a reserve chaplain, so I was only seeing my soldiers 1 weekend a month. But I realized the other 27, 28 days of the month, they still needed counsel. They still needed support. Their families needed support. They were having children and wanted their children to be Christian, but they weren't part of a church, but they can't bring their kids to drill that 1 weekend. And so just a lot of phone calls and a sense of need. So I opened a community center. And out of the community center, God told me to start a school. And I was just like, that's going to be weird. My kids are in the daycare across the street. My church's daycare. I don't need to do that. Right. And literally that weekend, two different people on two totally different random occasions stopped me and were like, you should start a school. You should start a school. And I just started chuckling because I try not to tempt the Lord too much. And so I said, fine, I'm going to start a school. I remember going on Vistaprint very vividly, ordering like one little background banner. I could barely afford to pay the rent, but I was just like, okay, cool. I'm going to enroll first grade students, and I just put the sign up on the front of the community center. And I had two students to enroll. The two moms that had stopped me and asked me randomly over that weekend were the only two parents to register and enroll in that first year. But from the time they stepped in the building, like, I knew God was up to something. I didn't know God was up to all of this. 13 years later, 21 acres, 300 minority students, a HBCU lifestyle school. I didn't know he was up to all of this, but I knew he was up to something. And so, the short end of the answer is I was led to this off of strictly obedience and service, like this idea of selfless service, community service, ministry that looks different outside the four walls of the church. And so that's what it's been, and that's what it continues to be today. The pillars have always remained the same: truth, humility, respect, integrity, victory, and excellence. And I pursued excellence when I had to. I pursued excellence when God blessed me with 56, with 84. And we're still pursuing excellence as we approach 300 plus. And so it's been a very uphill climb at times, but super beneficial to the kingdom of God and beneficial to our communities. The alumni that we have released out into the world are all serving and pouring back into their community, whether it's through military service, whether it's in college, whether it's in their advanced degrees that they've gotten, and they're in a career field now, bringing the light of Christ into places that Christ may not be at. But they're all benefiting the kingdom and doing kingdom work. So I'm super excited about that and the opportunity to continue to release good Samaritans into the world, which is the goal. The goal is to produce scholars, but also good Samaritans. Yes.
No, that's amazing. And I have to say, the first time I met you, you just have this energy and this joy about you that I was watching you from across the room and I was like, who is that right there? So I could totally see a calling on you. And especially, I think we all have talents and gifts. And yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful that you were obedient to what you heard and listened. A lot of times people will hear those words, but don't take heed to it. So, this is a true testament of what happens when you just listen and do the work. Thrive means what?
So Thrive, the acronym itself is truth, humility, respect, integrity, victory, and excellence are our pillars at Thrive.
Yeah. And so with those pillars, are those built into, and I think that's what you're about to answer, those are built into the structure of your
Every,
school, everything,
every,
right? And your school's K through 12?
The school is K through 12, yes, ma'am. And the pillars of Thrive are built into everything, whether it's the curriculum or the hybrid offerings that we offer, whether it's the beta club, whether it's our students traveling for enrichment trips. No matter what it is, there's always some point of reference back to those pillars because character is essential. Character development is essential to like a productive academic pursuit, one that's being done with integrity anyway. And so we're really big on building the character of our young people. We don't want to just produce scholars, as I said. We want to produce servant leaders, servant scholars, and good Samaritans. And so those pillars ground everything that we do. It's our catchphrase, the Thrive Way, because anything that you're being asked to do by an adult, anything that you're being asked to do by one of your organization leaders, anything you're being asked to do by an educator or an administrator, there's always going to be a point of reference to a Thrive pillar that we can reference as to the justification for why we're asking you to do it a certain way. There's a lot of ways to do education, as we can see now, right, with school choice and freedom to choose and everything kind of having a movement and catching this momentum of parents standing up and saying, you know what, I think this should be done differently for the sake of my individual student. But there has to be some commonality. Right? When you take 300 babies K through 12 and put them in a building, you're pulling families from all different demographics, different economic statuses. There has to be a common thread that binds all of us together. And so that's what the Thrive Way is. It's those 6 pillars that says, you know what, regardless if you came from the suburbs or urban area, if you came from an apartment or your parents own a ranch, irregardless, these are the 6 pillars that you're being held accountable to here at Thrive Christian Academy. And this is how you're being judged as far as your development as a servant leader.
I love that. So, I want to ask you because 19 years in the military, right? You're a veteran. 19 years, that's a long service within itself. And then you said you were a chaplain. What was
Yes.
your school experience like? Just out of curiosity, did you go to traditional school? Did you go to private school?
So that's a fun question. So I actually went to maybe 11 different schools before I graduated. My parents were both in the military. And so I was born in Germany. The majority of my K-12 experience were in Department of Defense, DOD schools. Okay. And so my experience was based on a lot of let's see, maybe tokenism. I didn't know to name it that then, but I was used to being like the only black girl in the talented and gifted classes or the only one in the band, but super athletic. So it's like I lived both worlds. So I was never Let's see, when I would come to the States, I was never black enough to blend in with people that looked like me because I was coming from overseas. I had an accent. I wasn't familiar with the music. Overseas, we have like two American channels on the TV, so I wasn't familiar with the shows. A Different World. I don't think I ever watched A Different World till I got to Howard, till I got to undergrad. But then when I was overseas, I wasn't whatever the other non-black race. I wasn't that enough either. It was really just this interesting duality and never kind of really settling in and finding pocket. And then I got accepted to Howard. I was not privy to HBCUs. Literally, the grace of God that I even applied. My mom's commander told me that he would pay my application fee and pay me $100 to apply to his alma mater. That's how I ended up applying to Howard. I wanted to play basketball at LSU or UNC Chapel Hill. So those were my top two. I applied to Howard just on a whim, just to do it, and ended up attending Howard on a full scholarship for ROTC. And I got there and I had complete and utter culture shock. Okay, that everyone looked like me. Everyone was smart. I wasn't the only smart black kid. Like that was kind of my academic upbringing. But I've always been extremely competitive. My mom raised me to be a very independent thinker. So it's just like, oh, this is different. This is going to be fun. Let me get to know this part of my history and this part of my heritage because I had never been in a pocket where I had permission to do so before.
That's a good word, having permission to do so. I've had a similar upbringing. Both of my parents were in the military as well. We moved around a lot for different reasons, not so much because of military service. I think just when you're a military kid, you get used to just getting up and uprooting and having to go. And so I can identify with having to move and having to be the new kid often and having to learn how to adapt to different environments.
Right, and get acclimated quickly, right? Like, and by the time you get acclimated, it's time to transition again, which has proved itself fruitful for this founding journey. I think that's part of being a school founder. I think the beauty in freedom to choose schools is that you all have the opportunity to empower us to say, like, your entire lived experience, bring all of you to the table. And then that is what the benefit is. That if that had not been my learned experience, I probably wouldn't be 13 years into education because there have been a lot of hurdles, a lot of hiccups, right? But because that's my lived experience, now I see God's intuition in putting me in all these various pockets with all these various hats, and now I have Thrive, where it's kind of like the best gumbo ever, where everything is just being stirred together, and that's one thing that I appreciate about this podcast, but also just this idea that the fullness of you can show up, and there are students that need something from every pocket. There's students that need something from every pocket of you, whether it was designated trauma, whether it was designated triumph, trial, shortcoming. Hey, I wasn't comfortable when I was, but now I see better and I understand better. Like those experiences, like we get to show up with all of that because there's a young person that's somewhere in that pocket. They need that resiliency that you were able to build out from that experience, and also it makes you relatable, right? And that's the beauty of being able to choose schools that are relatable to your student. Like there are, yeah, yeah. Find someone with a similar lived experience or someone with a similar aspiration. It's a totally different ball game. It's like having a coach that has actually played the sport that they're coaching, right? You don't hire a golf coach to teach football because you're just like, well, I mean, cool, you read it in a book, but have you lived this experience? And I think that's the beauty of the authentic school founders, the founders that show up in the fullness of who they are. It's not perfect, but I'm willing to take a shot. I'm willing to put my hand out there, and God sends who He needs to send to be able to benefit from our experience. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, that is amazing, and I think that's a great segue into exploring some of your identities. So you're a founder, you're a pastor, you're a principal, you're a musician, you're a former athlete. All these different things. But I want to focus on the founder, pastor, and principal because those them in themselves carry different roles and responsibilities within a school. How do you manage those identities within a school environment?
The beauty of Thrive is that to me they feel very synonymous. That being the founding principal, the head of school, and pastoring Thrive for me are synonymous. Like I can't do one without the other. It would be really challenging for me to only show up and pastor Thrive and not be engaged in the academic side of it as head of school or principal. It would be challenging for me to show up to programming as if I don't know what this looked like 13 years ago when there are only two students. We just had a senior commencement. But I know when I started, I had to literally have sell fish plates in Tri-City's funeral home parking lot to raise $100 to rent the auditorium at the library up the street for my two little students, three students by the end of that first year. I had three. Like I realized that struggle. So when it comes down to senior commencement now, and we have the LED screens and all these students and all these graduates and the Beta Club coming in their orange blazers, and we have the majorettes and the drumline and all the hoopla and the pomp and circumstance and all the things that my team is like, oh my gosh, this is so over the top. Can we just do something? Like, Miss Monica, do you do anything regular? And in my mind, I'm just like, I've done regular. And even when I did regular, I did it in excellence. Like,
No, you
like
ain't never done
my
nothing
kids
regular.
dressed up. Yeah, like I'm like the kids dressed up. It was only three of us at graduation. Like one guy from the library stopped in and sat in. I think we might have like three guests there in total. But even then, there was the pomp and circumstance. So for me, um, to because I'm a pastor and because I preach to my kids this idea that like if you're faithful over a few, God will increase and enlarge, right? When I sit at senior commencement and I have more seniors graduating than I had in my entire school when I started, I can't help but to be like, tie this into the narrative when I'm talking to them as their head of school, tie this into the narrative when I'm giving principal remarks in the middle of the program. And so I don't know what it would be like for me to kind of departmentalize those titles, but I know that they complement each other well here at Thrive Christian Academy because the environment is conducive to it, right? And I think that's important. I think it's important that for school founders that you form a school that's authentic to you. Because if you're worried about trying to compete with the school up the street or whatever, then the experiences won't be authentic. You won't be able to share the duality of all your hats. If you've worked in McDonald's before, this idea of working away from frying the fries to managing also helps your students when you're trying to encourage them that a matriculation is coming. Let's push this agenda, right? And so if I was trying to compete with other schools, it would be problematic for me.
And I love how you named that to be authentic to yourself, because that is real. It is so real. That's the only way I feel like you can be sustainable. If you have to wear fullness of your identity. Well, let me ask you too about management, because not only do you have 100% graduation rate, you also have 100% college acceptance rate, but you also have a 93% teacher retention rate, which is really fascinating, especially in these day and times. What would you say is, the secret to the teacher retention that you were able to accomplish?
Be a leader. Be a servant leader. My teachers may not always understand. My administrators may not always understand what direction I'm coming from, but they do trust the God in me, and I'm integral with that. If it's my idea, I'll say that. Hey, I'm thinking we should do this. If it's something that God revealed to me, is a totally different conversation. Hey, this is how God revealed it to me. This is what I see. Where do you see yourself fitting into this? Like what role? Hey, go home and sleep on it, pray on it, be intentional. Come back tomorrow and tell me what has God given you to contribute to this work. And the thing is, when everyone sees that, like I'm part owner of Thrive because I'm shepherding here. I'm here as a shepherd over these children. I'm shepherding this campus. I'm shepherding this experience. Then people are invested. It's a different level of investment when I feel connected to the student, their family, and their well-being, right? So I'm not as quick to say, oh, there's more money over here because I'm invested here and the reward that I get for being invested here. Like I trust God is going to send the resources too. And because God has done that, and because our veteran teachers testify to it often. And so it's not like, oh, me just standing up making up stories like, hey, you guys, we were short. And the day before somebody came and dropped off a check. Like the people that received the check at the door are like, no, that really did happen. I was standing right here. Like there's people to testify to the multiple miracles that have happened to sustain Thrive. And so I think sometimes people stay out of curiosity because they're waiting for their Thrive miracle story to like everybody else got a story. I'm gonna say I get a story. But mainly yeah. Mainly, I think it's important to be authentic. That when I don't know something, I know. When I do know something, I say I know something. If it's my idea, I say it. If it's God's idea, I say it. I think it's important to be authentic because people don't mind being invested where they can trust the leadership, and I think that's important. I think in the military, and I hear it in movies sometimes when people say people don't know how much people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And I think at Thrive, or not, I think I know at Thrive, the community is a caring community. We're not perfect. You talk about 30 plus grown people with their own wives, their own husbands, their own spouses, their own lives, their own trauma, and we show up every day. But we start with prayer together. Every morning we pray together. We do praise reports. We do prayer requests. And so even that consistency and constantly hearing the narratives of the people to the left and the right of who you work with, who you're pouring with, who you're sacrificing alongside, and then you have these moments where these students go and do these amazing things, and you're just like, man, I wouldn't rather do this with another group of people other than the people that are here, right? So it changes the way you interview because you're interviewing for who fits, like who fits into the cohort that's already here. And people want to see it come to fruition. This thing that they've been pouring into, like I want to see the vision come to fruition. And so I'm not leaving. I'm not going to sit here. It's like warming up a slot machine, right? Like you're warming up the slot machine, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I'm tired, and you get up and you walk away, and then Jay comes and sits in the seat and puts a penny in there and hits the jackpot. And what's your first thought? Had I just stayed put, had I just for 5 more minutes, right? Like it's almost like that's the best analogy I can think of. It's like, oh my gosh, I've poured so much into Thrive. Like I'm not gonna miss the moment that it comes full circle, and I'm like, wow, it happened just the way God said it was. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is, again, the leadership is definitely the thing, trusting the trusting you, trusting your administration, having a tremendous amount of faith, but also as an administrator or leader, when you're interviewing, you're looking for people that have those types of things within them already. Like, do they fit in this role? And so it's also it's a both and, right? Because you have to be able to recruit well too, and invest in like being able to establish what it's going to mean to like to fit in this type of model. Like, everybody doesn't have the same faith as you, Dr. Monica, but if they've got that little mustard seed of faith to believe in the process. But I also hear you saying that even for those who haven't, there have been so many blessings that have been poured into your school that it's probably built people's faith even more. Like you said,
It's more so that. Yeah, yeah, it's more so that.
it's just such an
Yes.
empowering thing. Just I could see, even to bear witness as a student, to know that here is the ultimate leadership in this school, and then here's how I'm supposed to show up, right? And I want to ask you about that as far as your recruiting for parents. How, because you are a private school, and so there's a tuition cost. How have you felt parents are wrestling with the tuition costs, or how have you approached that when you have parents, especially coming from high needs areas? I know you do serve a large portion of high needs schools. So how do you handle tuition costs with parents and getting them to fit the bill?
Our tuition, because we had to do a survey when we came to this campus, is about literally like 41% below everyone else's tuition around us. And so because of the primary demographic that we serve from where we came from. So DeKalb County is a 99% Title One county. And so we were birthed out of DeKalb County. And so we inherited my baby's from DeKalb County. And so we are a Title One private school. And so one of the things that helps us to be able to keep the tuition reasonably priced is that we have federal program funds that help cover tutoring, that help assist the student services still move with them, like their ABAs and all the things. And then this past year, the state of Georgia they released their first ESA. And so the Georgia Promise Scholarship also helped with that a little bit. But I mean, realistically, the short end of the stick is it's just the grace of God. Like at the end of the month, when we look at the numbers, they're never where they need to be to have pulled off everything that we pulled off. But God has honored our due diligence, and He sends in-kind donations, sends the resources, sends what we need. We've never had a major fundraising thrust. That's something that I'm trying to learn and become familiar with to help supplement the tuition expenses. We try to work with families if they cannot afford the tuition. We do try to work with families and come up with reasonable plans. We reach out to our board members and ask them to help families that may be in need that they feel like they can relate to their particular stories. And a lot of it is that we don't recruit. So people that come to Thrive, they come by word of mouth. So we don't do like standard radio announcements and all that kind of stuff. And paid ads on social media. We don't do any of that. If you're at Thrive, it's because God sent you this way. We're down this super long driveway, so you didn't happen to just drive by us. If you come down this driveway, it's because you're here with a purpose, or you know someone that already goes to Thrive. And the beauty, I have found the beauty of that is that people are authentic. People tell them, Miss Monica is crazy. She's one of those people that you either love or you just don't care for. She's loud. She don't play about the kids on the positive side, and when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, she's gonna put them out of her school and love them from afar and let them apply again later. Like I'm just a straight shooter, so I try to be consistent in that regard, and that has helped as well when it comes down to just recruitment and the tuition. We're not trying to spike the tuition too much, but like the tuition has grown. But I think the highest tuition rate right now is for high school and it's $10,000 annually. So like $1,000 a month. No one's doing that with full STEM labs, esports, drum lines, majorettes, Christian opportunities, chapel every week, academics in all core subjects, and you also have a learning management system where you have access to over 500 electives. Like no one's doing that for that price point, and so that works to our benefit. That we make it affordable to families, and then we trust God to send the resources to cover the difference is my honest response. But families know that. Like when they come to Thrive, they know like, hey, the tuition isn't high. And so everyone has to do their part. And the community of Thrive does their part. When we moved to this campus, we had a grant that had purchased brand new furniture for all the classrooms, literally 300 desks, 300 chairs that needed to be assembled. And we had a build a school night, like Build a Bear. I put out a flyer and I said, hey, parents, I need help. We have 10 drills, we got mats, and we have 300 desks and 300 legs that need to go on 300 times 4, 1,200 legs that need to get put on these desks and moved to the classrooms that they need to go to. And we hosted a build a school night, and we did it 2 nights in a row, provided light refreshments, and parents came. When we call for the community of Thrive to help us for the greater good of the community to thrive. I don't need to say like, hey, you guys, you don't pay enough tuition for us to be able to afford to pay people to do this. I don't need to say all that. People know that. They know that coming in, that this is a space where we're all going to contribute. Yes, it takes a village, but you're part of the village. So when you drop your kids off to us, we're doing our due diligence. If I call for you and I need your help, I need you to show up. And I
And
don't
they
call you
do.
off. Yes,
Yeah.
and they do.
Mhm.
And they
They
do.
do. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Look, I got two more questions for you before we wrap up. This has been so inspiring, and I think that even though you don't advertise, I'm assuming somehow we're gonna have to find a way for people to reach you because, again, what you have produced and what you continue to do in honor of your calling is just amazing, and we want to see something like this replicated. The huge thing about being a guest on our show is to show what is possible, and you are truly someone that's been able to do that. Two final questions. The first one is, you speak a lot about faith. You speak a lot about, the goodness of God and the things that you're able to do. What are some of those areas that you found challenging? Like if you wanted to share so that someone who's listening would say, like, how can I help Thrive Academy? Where do you see some challenges that you definitely look for support?
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the main challenges, well, I'll say two. One is in facility acquisition and finding accountants and auditors and the financial side of it that makes sense for private Christian academies. There's people out there that finance churches. There's people out there that finance charter schools. There's now some charter schools. Now they're starting to fool with private schools a little bit, but there's not many people out there that I'm privy to that are looking for private Christian schools to fund to support, right? And so people that do church, the accounting side of it, the bookkeeping side of it, QuickBooks, Intuit, I had them for forever. Then they came back and was like, oh, we can't do it anymore because you're in a nonprofit. Like there's just all these nuances that come with Christian private schools. And so if there were someone out there to specialize with the financial side of that, from funding to bookkeeping to accounting, that would be great. That would be a huge load off. It's challenging to find people to do audits. Then I have to go in and explain to them why in June and July the accounts go down pretty much to nothing because it's just summer camp compared to during the school year when there's a gazillion kids, right? But then parents, and there's this influx when people get their tax refunds based on the demographic we serve, but then there's a slump in December, and so just the nuance, somebody that understands the nuances of private school education, but also Christian school education, and then Title One population education. Right. And so that's the first thing that I would definitely take any support, resources, assistance, and consistency. There's the consistency of it, and someone that can commit and prioritize it, or apps or whatever that are out there that are friendly, user friendly for people that are in the private education game. And then the second thing I would say are teacher salaries. That because our tuition isn't super high, um, our teachers take the sacrifice, they take the hit in the salaries that we're able to offer. And so I would definitely be open to people that fundraise in that regard, or could help. I know the easy fix is to say, oh, just raise your tuition, but then that totally changes the demographic that we serve, and starts to exclude people. We don't want to exclude people. We want to include all of God's children. So advisement, resources, advocacy, in the regards of being able to generate more funds to put into the pockets of private school teachers. And a lot of them are willing to take that because they don't have the bureaucracy of public school. So they're like, you know what, I'll take the sacrifice in exchange for peace every day when I go to the school, or being able to, do what I feel led to do passionately, right? But I think it's a sacrifice we shouldn't have to make.
I want to go back just a step because facilities acquisition is something huge that a lot of founders and school leaders don't articulate to like the regular person. And so my understanding is facilities is basically being able to house a building or a place for all of your students to go and to grow. Can you speak a little bit about what that means when you say facilities acquisition challenges?
So facilities acquisition, number one, is your school grows, you have to grow too, right? And so zoning, and getting people in zoning offices to understand that what you're doing. Are you fully accredited? Are you a licensed daycare or not? There's just a lot of nuances for the National School Lunch Program. You have to meet the credentials for that. But does your facility have a fully certified kitchen so that you can be privy to the National School Lunch Program? Are you allowed to do transportation? The insurance that comes with the facility, will they insure the facility? Do you have to have a sprinkler system? Are you allowed to add accessory buildings as you grow? These are all considerations that, you're just like, oh, we found a spot, but then you get in there, you're leasing, or you're renting, or you're paying your mortgage, and then here comes the zoning office, and they're like, hey, this isn't up to code. You have to fix this. You have to repair this. Oh, you need to sprinkler it. You can't be grandfathered in. The building was empty for 6 months, so now you're responsible for it. Or when you're leasing, having your landlord to have a sense of urgency, like, hey, it's 20 degrees outside and the heat is out. Like, yeah, I could fix it, but that's not my responsibility. That's your responsibility. But the parents don't want to hear that. The parents, they drop them off to you, right? So they want you to fix it. And you're just like, hey, I have to wait on the landlord to fix that, right? So just these ideas of like, how do we carry it? So facilities, all things facilities, not just turning the door and I have a set of keys, but the utilities, the maintenance of it, the acquisition of it. How do I acquire this? What does it look like to have a tax bond? But that process takes 6 months, but I only have 3 months to make an offer. So now I need bridge funding. But then there's an organization that'll buy it from me, but now I got to buy it back from them, and it costs me more to buy it back from them. Had I just been able to have 6 months, but now I need an attorney to advocate for me. But this is different than commercial real estate because it's private school, and private school has different zoning, and the zoning changes based on the county. And no, there's no consistency. There's no consistency across the board. What I was expected to do for my building at DeKalb is totally different than where I am now in Gwinnett County, right? And people know that. Like, people know that. When I call companies and I'm like, hey, I just want to get quotes on modulars, they're like, what county are you in? And depending on their experience with the administration in the zoning office in that particular county, even they don't want to fool with it sometimes. And they'll turn you away. And that's pretty tough when you're willing to spend the money and people are like, nope. Last client we had in that county, it took us 9 months to get the permits. It's not worth it, and we advise you to move on. Right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
what do you tell? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and the people that are willing to go through the 9 months, they charge you for that because now you're paying them as they're waiting because they're in limbo, right? And so when I say facility acquisition, I'm talking about all of it. Even finding facilities large enough to house your school, or small enough. When I was smaller, I didn't have these problems, right? But now, like, it's a blessing to be able to look at something and be like, oh, we can't fit, but we got to fit somewhere, right? And then ownership, right? How important is ownership? And when you're in a minority, 100% minority school like mine, we want to be able to demonstrate and display that for our students, ownership, right? But it has to make sense financially for us too. What is ownership going to cost us? Who picks up the difference between the lease rate and the mortgage, right? Does that come in tuition influx? But that tuition influx was supposed to be for teacher salaries, but now we're shifting that to mortgages, and so it's just this constant eyes for integrity. How do I be integral with the facilities that I'm choosing, but also how do I know what I don't know when choosing the facility? Like who can really advise me on the pros and the cons and the things I need to look for? And that kind of puts me in this pocket of educational consulting, which I find myself doing a lot more of lately, because you just don't know what you don't know. And I don't want people to have to go through these same hurdles that I went through. But it's also challenging to quantify that. Like, how do I charge you for something that I struggle through to figure out, but I do want to see you do well. And so even that nuance of what does it look like for community among us? What does it look like if you're part of the freedom to choose schools? What does it look like if you're part of the McLeod Odyssey? What does it look like if I already know you? What does it look like to share resources and say, hey, I went through them, you should go through them, and I'm going to call and refer you, and not have to worry about the person on the other end doing something to damage the relationship. So then we're on trust, right? And so all these pillars of Thrive kind of just play out across the board, whether we're talking consulting, advisement, facility acquisition. um it all wraps itself back around each other. It's almost like you're looped back to the beginning, and a lot of people are willing to do schools and start schools, but finding a facility and getting it zoned scares so many people off. Like, people just throwing a towel because you're just like, is this really be worth it?
I think as you were naming everything, yeah, as you were naming everything, somebody's like writing it down. Like, well, wait a minute, I was following her until she said all that. Now I'm just gonna forget. I'm just gonna stay where I'm at. Forget it. Never mind. No, but this is great because it just shows the depth of what you go through in order to be a founder, a principal, a pastor, a school leader, all those things. And how it's not just passion, right? I mean, you are a fully accredited school. Let's not escape that part. That you are fully accredited school with 93% teacher retention, which is amazing. Again, 100% graduation rate. Like, whatever you're doing is working. However, it's also can be very taxing. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that we name that. The other reason why I wanted to name it is because there in every environment we have with any type of school. Again, we support micro schools, home schools, charter schools, traditional schools, private schools. There, everyone always seems to think it's the greenest grass or the grass is greener on the other side, right? See, but also when we've specifically talked about communities of color and the choices to go to private school versus public, there's often a misconception about private school just having everything together, and you have literally shown how you can have everything together and still have challenges. It's not like it's a greener pasture over here. It's just a different set of circumstances, and so I'm hoping that the listeners hear that. The other thing that I love that you named that I want people to catch is that you spoke specifically about how you do not want to have to increase tuition because that then takes away from the character, the development, and the type of student that you're trying to pastor and educate. Which also then takes you want to keep the pressure off of the parents and the students because they just want to learn. They just want to come and be in an environment. So, uh, I hope everyone hears that and understands that from a private school perspective, we are talking to a private school founder who is very much invested in being student centered, in addition to being Christ centered, which is probably the most valuable, most honorable thing about Thrive Academy. Monica, last question for you is if you've seen our podcast, if you heard anything about it, it's called Choice Words. And we call it Choice Words for a reason because, it's choice words in the sense of being a part of a community of school choice and options, but also because it's about pouring in words to people to get them to understand what this process is like. And with your experience, your pastoral experience, your leadership experience, I am sure you have some choice words that you want to share with our listeners. And so to close this out, what is it? What is it? What does God put heavy on your heart, or what is it that you're thinking that if you had some choice words to share with people listening to this podcast today, what would you tell them?
I would tell people to make the investment. So if you're a founder, make the investment in the thing you're called to found. If you are a parent, make the investment in your student, even if it seems like it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to afford it. If that's the perfect spot for them to be, and you know that that's where you're being laid to, make the investment. Eat sandwiches for a week. Don't eat out. Don't Uber Eats. Don't DoorDash. They don't need the $300 shoes. They need a diploma. They need an education. They need character, right? If you're an educator, I say make the investment. Wherever you're planning right now, if they're not paying you enough, you're still struggling, you're there. That's your assignment. You're there to shepherd. Make the investment in front of the kids in front of you. And I say that because other people are willing to make the investment. There's people investing in prisons right now. There's people investing in workforce labor right now. There's people investing in everything that we do, funeral homes, cemeteries, all the things calling for minority, black and brown babies. If we don't make the investment in the direction that we want them to go, there's investments being made that will outrun us and outrace us. So it's important. Make the investment.
That was very powerful. It literally hit me in my heart. I'm actually getting emotional to hear you say that because I never put it in that perspective, but it really is true. I mean, to hear you say that, if we don't make the investments in our children in the right way, there are people that are making investments in our children in the wrong way, and we've got to be able to counter that. Ms. Monica, Dr. Hall, Pastor Monica Hall, all the things, all the titles you have, you are truly a blessing, and I have been completely inspired, as I'm sure our listeners will be, to listen to this podcast. To all of us that have tuned in, we wanted to present another opportunity for you to see what does private school choice look like when it's led by our people, by the right people, people who are called to this work, people who believe in our students in a way that sometimes get missed when they don't have options and opportunity. And I think what we heard from Dr. Hall with Thrive Academy is a perfect example about when you have the right type of leader and leadership in a community, you actually build 100% graduation rates, 100% college acceptance, and really a community of people thriving to be better. Dr. Hall, I thank you so much. And I thank everyone for listening. And stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to explore the powerful leadership that comes when you invest in people of color and specifically Black and Brown educators. Thank you so much, Dr. Hall.